The League of Professional Theatre Women is pleased to celebrate nominees for the 2020 Gilder Coigney International Theatre Award. Meet Dr. Andrea Tompa, Editor-in-Chief of Színház Hungarian Theatre magazine and President of the Hungarian Theatre Critics Association. She has worked with many of Hungary's and Romania's most influential artists and is a key mentor to young female critics. Dr. Tompa also works to elevate the careers of female directors whose accomplishments are often minimized in the region's professional theatre arena. A global 24-hour countdown of performances begins at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on February 15th, leading to the awards ceremony on February 16th, 2021.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our panel discussion on Hungarian women artists on the contemporary performing arts scene. First, let me introduce the speakers. Ildikó, Gáspár, Zita, Szenteczki, and Noémi Herczog, and I would like to give more details about their activities. Ildikó is a dramaturg and director. She graduated from the Theatre and Film Academy as a dramaturg, and Ildikó works both in an important theatre in Budapest and created independent shows in Hungary and abroad. Zita Szenteczki is also graduated from the Theatre and Film Academy. Now she's a PhD student there. Zita graduated as a puppet theatre director and created shows both in repertory theatres and independent houses. And Noémi Herczog is a theatre critic who is also affiliated with the Theatre Academy, from where she holds a PhD, and she's also an academic. And finally, my name is Andrea Tompa, and I'm a writer and practiced theatre criticism for more than 2 decades, and I'm also an academic. Our discussion panel today is around and about the position of women artists on the contemporary Hungarian performing arts scene, and I would like first to ask the participants to make a short statement how they define or how they see their own position as a woman in the artistic field. And I would like to learn something about their own personal experience and their situation. So maybe Ildikó, you could start.
Okay. If I think about my position, then about position, I already have to think about what it means, because it was always very hard for me to get along with this with this word, but it means to have a position. For me, position is more a function in theater, but in a hierarchical concept of theater, a position is rather someone who has a certain amount of power. And in these terms, I have a great position in the Hungarian theater field because I'm a leading person in a leading theater in a Örkény theater for several years. I've working for I think almost 18 years there, so quite a lot. And I started here as a dramaturg, and 10 years ago I started to direct my own performances, and actually Andrea introduced me as a dramaturg as well, but I'm not working as a dramaturg for 6 years now. So I consider myself right now as a director who adapts sometimes her own texts for stage, but I think lots of other directors do this. And in this position as this kind of leading artistic person in this theater, I try to support young artists. Like, that sounds a bit crazy, but I try to give a chance to artists who probably not considered as mainstream in a way, like actors who are out a little bit of convention, and this means that we just get some new actors into the theater who probably had another way in the theater field. Like my Macbeth, I cast a young actor who is overweight, and a Macbeth should be in a Hungarian theater some handsome guy around 40, and not a 20-year-old, 25-year-old with overweight. So that's like, and also Zita, I get to know like this, that I promoted her to work in our theater. I'm very happy that she already made 2 productions in our theater. So that's one, it's about position. And as a director, I think I have much more possibilities abroad. Right now, in this season, I have 3 different works in 3 different countries until next January. And in Hungary, I direct in the Erkény Theater, and that's all, I think. I also not try to find anything else, because I feel that the space is just getting more and more narrower and little for Hungarian artists. But it's also like this. For me, it's much better to find my place abroad in the end. That's my experience. I can talk about this also later on more in detail, but this is the truth. And so as you also told, I think the most important for me is always to have this need to establish myself as a director, and somehow to get rid of these prejudices that I'm someone who is really linked to the texts. I had to, in the last years, to destroy these preconceptions about someone who is working with text, that this person can't have a talent for visual, for technique, for anything like this, because these are the usual preconceptions. And I think more or less I could build this preconception towards me down. I hope so, at least for now, but I'm quite old, so it took a while.
Zita, Ildikó said that she feels that she has far more options and possibilities abroad. And I'm asking you, as a young woman director in Hungary, what are your options here? What is the environment you work in?
Yes, so as you said, I feel myself really lucky that I can work in like repertoire and also independent theater field. But I never worked abroad yet as Ildi, so I also feel I am lucky and I have good opportunities here. I also want to try out later, but it didn't happen yet. And yeah, I think what is important maybe that I am a member of many humanities here, which are really important for me. So maybe I would say some things about that. For example, we founded an independent theater company called Narrative, which we founded together 4 directors, 2 women and 2 men. And it's kind of new here that directors working together, because it's meant like a lonely work. Usually we think of that. And we try to be cooperative together, and we are applying for together with grants and funds. Yeah, as you said, I am also studying in the theater and film university as a doctoral student, and I am the head of the student association, so there is also a lot to do. And there is another multidisciplinary group. It's called Babel, which is basically like an art camp in the summers, which is based on sharing knowledge and like exchanging experiences of how to change society. So it's a really inspiring together working group, and like there is many things which is came there. For example, one like few member of Babel, we started to work together on a documentary film together, and it's like about how our generation see the Hungarian national identity. So these are the things which I am really in now. Yeah.
Thank you. Noémi, you are an observer of the theater field, and how do you see this field, the contemporary situation? How do you see this field from the point of view of the position of women artists in Hungarian theater?
Well, as you said, I work as a critic and as an editor too, not just as an academic. And that way, in our paper, Theatre Journal, it's a monthly Színház, we try to highlight also the work of women. Like we had 2 issues solely focusing on invisible women in Hungarian theater, and also we had one focusing on masculinity. And by that I also say that what Ildi and Zita has said is true, like maybe the position that Ildi has now is the result of a long and powerful and strong work where she is now, and she perhaps needed more strength and work for that than maybe a man in her position. I think women in contemporary Hungarian theater are usually, we will talk about that I guess later, but they are nowadays more accepted to be directors into the academy, into the director classes, but it's not a long tradition. So the tradition of women in Hungarian theater is more invisible. You can find their names in these classes one by one since the 50s, but you don't necessarily find their names later on in the field, in the actual field. And you more find their names among dramaturgs, among designers, set and stage designers, and many times these people earn their degrees abroad, and when they come home, they have to accept themselves as theater professionals. It's also unique that Ildi is in a public theater, in a repertory theater, and she gave possibility to Zita to work there, because the usual case, I would say, is rather to work in independent venues if you don't do your work as an applied artist, but you create your own show as a set designer to create visual theater, for example. So it's more like in the margins, but I think it's also true to Eastern Europe. So it's not something particularly only true about Hungary.
What do you think about, and I would like to open a little bit the discussion toward the history and to the past, to see what Hungarian theater inherited from the past. And one issue is the academy, but first I would like to talk a little bit about the position in the past of women in Hungarian theater. Where were they? Did they have any powerful positions, or they were mostly only accepted as actresses and maybe like dramaturgs? So what do you think about this heritage? What is this heritage like?
This is a very hard question, I think, because since I started to work as a dramaturg in 2003, I had very bad experiences already as a dramaturg, how I am considered like someone who should make the coffee. So that's, I mean, not of course in our theater, but I had several works in the countryside, and it was not allowed to talk into a discussion when I had these experiences that I had to ask for permission to share my opinion about something. It was quite quite clear that in this hierarchy I have not the same rights as other person, and I couldn't take part in a discussion of directors about the show I was working with because I was only the dramaturg and the female. And this was quite strange for me. I was the age of Zita, I think, and I felt, or some 24, 25, and I felt that it's ridiculous. So I was not intimidated of this, but I realized that it's somehow this system is how it's working. It's ridiculous, and it took for me a while to establish myself also as a dramaturg who is working with the text, who is making something that has a meaning. It was a big work. And although I wanted to be a director since I was 16 or something like this, the reaction of others was always that it's impossible for a woman, especially if this woman is not possessing masculine, I don't know, looking or what physical characteristics and others. So it's I can tell that I heard only about Erzsébet Gál, who was a director, and she's a sort of legend, but she was on the periphery. She was never teaching, to my knowledge, at the theater academy. So she was never canonized. She is known because she was the master of Sándor Zsótér, who is a well-known director in Hungary, and he is referring to her many times. But we don't know about her work. I would love to know more about her work, but I don't know that much. And I know Eszter Novák, who in the 90s was very famous, and she made wonderful shows. I also happened to see. But I could see how she gets more and more on the periphery in the theater field, although she's a very powerful woman and more she has this man-like power, I would say. So she has the way of being a director, like it is accepted from a director how should be, which I never possessed. I never could done. So but, that's
what did you do when you realized that your position as a woman dramaturg is to serve coffee to a director, and you don't have the option to enter a discussion? Did you start to fight? Did you start to convince? Did you start to be nice? What were your tools?
No, this was actually not from side of the directors. Of course, the director chose me as a colleague because they trusted me as a dramaturg. This was more a kind of convention that how actors, for example, in the countryside, were considering a dramaturg. So when I was working there, after 3 weeks, it happened to me that some of them asked me if I'm the girlfriend of a director. It was like this.
Zita, you come from a different generation. And my question is, what did you realize of this heritage. Did you have the same experience as Ildikó, or as a representative of another generation, you had different experiences?
Yes, I was thinking the same what you told, that if you think back to the Hungarian history, I mainly can remember actresses who was famous as like women. And yeah, I was also thinking like Erzsébet Galgóci, who I did a performance by from her novel, and she was like in the 50s and she could write sometimes, yes, sometimes not, but like for me, she's like a powerful woman. And yeah, your question is, I think I was really in the changing period, because, for example, the above classes, like there was Pani was the only girl in the director class. And in my class, it's a bit different with puppet, because it's more like somehow it's more mixed. So in my class, there was 4 boys and 3 girls. So it was already. And the next class, so the youngers, there are 6 girls only. So I think it's like fastly changing now. But I also, I don't know, sorry if I change a bit the topic, but I also wanted like reflect a bit what Ildi said, that like also puppet has a price, like some opinions that it's like not as strong or not as good, or it's just only for children's. So how people say it. And I was really lucky that actually Ildi saw my exam, which was from my diaries, and that she could invite Palmácsai, who's the leaders of Örkény Színház, which is like a really strong art theater in the center of Budapest, and that's why I could direct there. And that's the reason I think that now people also think to me as a director. And I mean, I love puppet and I love final art, and that's why I chose that. So it's not like something bad opinion for me, but I really don't like that when we put art in boxes and we say, okay, puppet, it's for children, because it's more, I think, also like a thinking or a visual thinking. So I hope I can use it more when I do pro theater, if we wanna put some stamps on.
Noémi, how do you see this shift? Is there a change, or how change is going on? And because Ildikó was describing a quite rigid system, and Zita already was talking about the change of the system, although Ildikó herself is an example of how the system can result into a change. How do you see this kind of shift?
Yeah, Ildikó herself, I think, is a help in making the system less rigid. And I also heard about the ages, maybe, so it's the tradition, even in the 90s. And when, if you are a girl, you are a dramaturg and you go to the left and you basically you learn theory and not practice. So this is how dramaturgy is interpreted. And if you are a man, you go to the right and you don't need. And from that, we could get to the last director class, where the majority of the class consists of women at the academy. The last class, I say, because now the university is grabbed by the actual populist regime in Hungary, just to put it in context. But if I think of my memory, and I don't go back so much in time, then I can think of 2013, when we organized Hungarian showcase for in France, for them to show the Hungarian independence fair mostly. And I remember that they were a bit surprised, not actually about the Hungarian theater, but I think more about the Hungarian culture at that phase, because it was a pre-Me Too phase in Hungary, with much less sensibility on how we portray women, how we show women. And I think neither on our part nor on the theater's part, there was less sensibility on these questions. So in the selection, there were much less women, and in the shows, there were much less women, and there was not so much consciousness about how violence towards women, and women themselves are shown. And when we got this mirror from those friends, actually quite helping, then I think that slowly this started to change. So even the next showcases were different. I think our perspectives became different, and also theater. Hungarian culture, theater culture, is very much against quotas. So it's not like the Theatertreffen, where last year we had 50% woman quota. Never at the academy this approach appeared, but still the sensibility or the sensitivity increased. And this is the result how the number of women became larger in director classes. And I think also it is visible in the shows, in the portrayals. And another thing is that the Me Too is really a clash. I think in this change of sensibility, the Hungarian Me Too started in 2017 with Lilla Sárosdi, the actress, coming out with her story about László Marton, a famous Hungarian theater director and artistic director of a big theater in Budapest, Comedy Theater. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a reunion of a political talk show on a commercial TV channel, which had many participants from the theatrical field too, and which was part of my childhood, which I loved about. And today, listening to it, it was so shocking to hear how sexist those jokes were. And it was also strange to see that there was only one woman among the participants, that it was a conscious thing, that only one woman can fit into a funny talk show because women have less sense of humor. It was actually stated too at this reunion. And of course, it also shows that what we think about humor, the sense of humor, that if we mean sexism, then of course a woman can much less contribute to such a program. But this started to change, I think, much more quickly after Me Too.
Would you like to reflect on what Noémi said about representation of women and the Me Too movement, maybe?
Yeah, I had just a quick comment that I think it's really interesting or really sad that in most of the Hungarian theaters are the leaders of the theater or the heads, they are men's above 50s and
60s.
Yeah.
Maybe even 60s, yeah.
But there is a small, I hope so, that there is an emerging tendency if we think to Radnóti Theater, that there is Adél Kovács, or Studio K, there is Kata Gyarmati, so it's 2 theaters, and there are women leaders.
Or Barda Bea at the Trafo.
Sorry, yeah, really important in Trafo, which is amazing. But just Noémi mentioned, for example, in the university, which will just it will just end, and the new curatomy, it's the members only for men. So it's I hope that there is something, but I was hoping, but in the same times now it seems like it's just destroying so much. So it's kind of bad, I think, still.
Let's go back a little bit to the academy, because partly you are all related in a way or other to the academy. And I find interesting that you both define yourself as directors right now, but none of you graduated in the regular directors classes. As you mentioned, Zita, puppet is considered something less valuable or something for children. And Ildikó had an attempt to graduate as a director, and she will tell her story, but was not accepted. So I find interesting that women directors who we might consider now important women directors do not necessarily come out from that nest, to put it like this, from the academy, from director's training of the academy. Would you like to reflect on this?
I don't know. I think it's very, you know, I think in my age, or when I was graduating, then there were hardly women accepted. So it was like maybe one or none. So that's mostly none, actually. So that's to be a director for a woman was only possible from somehow other way. Mainly actresses started to direct. So for a dramaturg, I think it was almost really impossible. Something that, but why it is like this? I don't know. I can tell that I had luck. Maybe that's it. You have to have luck. I had luck because Pál Mácsai told me really after a year I was working there, 2004 or 5, that I should direct. He thinks I'm a director and I should start to direct. And then my daughter was born, so I had postponed this first attempt. But then she was already old enough, then I started to direct. And if it doesn't happen like this, I think I never get this opportunity. And of course, the pressure is always there that I had no possibility to go through a school and to this attempts that has not the same value as outside in the big world. So in this case, each attempt of mine was a kind of proof of being capable or not. So it was a very big pressure on one hand, and on the other hand, if you have to carry such a big pressure, then you just don't care anymore because it's impossible. if there are big rocks above your hand just hanging down and can crush you in any time, then you are not taking care. So I think I had luck and I had consistency. I think that's that's it.
Noémi, do you see? I'm sorry, Zita.
No,
say-
no. Okay, no, I just wanted
ahead.
to say like puppet, like I really wanted to go there. So it was my own decision. I want to try this. I am not so sure I would apply if it's like prose theater director. So I was really happy when I saw there is this opportunity. And by the university, our teacher was really careful. Like every year we did prose and puppet. So it was like really the education was really much both. But I also really feel what I said before, that I also had luck because of Ildi and because of hurricane. So otherwise from the university, I think I could not like really like shown in the prose field. And also in the independent, I had luck because I think it's really about like good meetings. So for example, when we did Persia with András Juhász, it's like was like really good meeting somehow, and it's many people came to Trafo, and that's why. So these meetings and things somehow like added together, and that's why I can work both. And yeah, so it's really something with luck. I really agree, and with meetings and helping each other and support. So yeah.
Yes, I would connect to this thought. I think it's very important that we female artists and directors support each other. I have also such a friend who is not Hungarian, director Jana Ross, and I've been befriended with her for 10 years, and she helped me a lot also to get into this international scene. Of course, I had to prove that I can do it, and I'm capable to make a performance in Sweden or in other countries. Like right now I'm working in Riga, so which language I don't even speak, but but I always consider this, that it's the only opportunity for, or not only, but a very important part of getting through to this is for women to be allies and to help each other, because we are only a few in this field. And yeah, I think that helps, and it's not the other director is not an enemy or someone who prevents me for getting a good job. I don't consider it like this.
I think here is the right moment to show the first video slide of your show. And before we start it, Ildikó, could you say one sentence about your show? Because we are going to see a few minutes of your show.
Yeah, this I made last year, a year ago, actually. It's from a Swiss author, Lukas Berfuss, and the original title is Frau Schmitz, which you can't translate into Swedish. So we choose Vem är Schmitz, who is Schmitz, this title. And I made it in Göteborg State Theater, City Theater, sorry. And it's about a transgender woman who it's a kind of farce and a burlesque way of how Lukas Berfuss writes. So the genre, I would say, is a kind of changing clothes comedy, like in the Shakespearean ways, that she has to get dressed as a man, although she considers herself as a woman, but she's still a biological man. And then they use this circumstance, and she has to dress back and forth from woman and man, and in the end she lets herself operate to get a final answer for this, and she gets a female body. And for me it was this about identity, and I could empathize with this when a person is just not, is out of the law and is not accepted by society as she is. And it's very funny. So that's that's all I wanted.
Thank you. So now let's see Ildikó Gáspár's work.
Där ute råder krig! Och den enda som tycks ha insett det är våran kära Schmitz.
Ingen manlighet. Ingenting. Så sa hon.
Det var obehagligt för dig. Kränkande. Men försök att se det ur ett annat perspektiv. Och inte ta det så personligt.
Va?
Och tacka henne.
Förlåt.
Nu har ju du fått chansen att göra någonting åt det här.
Vad har Schmitz som inte jag har?
Det där är fel inställning. måste utveckla din manlighet.
Men om det inte finns någonting att utveckla då? Schmitz!
Men jag kan omöjligt resa till Karachi.
Nej. Varför inte det?
Hur tänker du? Jag i Pakistan som kvinna.
Going back to our discussion, I would like to emphasize two things Ildikó, both Ildikó and Zita was saying, that as a woman artist, you needed luck and then solidarity. None of you was talking about degrees, talents, and masters, but these two things. Noémi, how do you see this kind of rhetoric of defining women artists as people who have luck and people who can help each other, they are allies? I think this would really be very different if we now would talk to male directors of the same age. They probably would not talk about luck and solidarity. How do you see this?
This is where I wanted to join, actually, that when I heard Ildi saying that, that on the one hand, getting into a director class gives you power, but on the other hand, it gives you a great tool if you come from a different direction, like all these different attitudes. Like, for example, when you say that we should help each other. This is a different attitude than the tradition is, at least. So, so I think being a woman director or being a woman artist, I'd rather say being a woman artist, because maybe the picture of the director, as the traditional Hungarian picture of the director, is a man and is someone who says what you have to do. And then this is why not so many women have been accepted to director classes, because they don't fit into this traditional picture. But as art should change, you are lucky, because in a sense, because you really got into a box where you were freer to be yourselves. And I am lucky because you exist, and I can see people who can be themselves and who don't have to adapt to already existing directions. So this is the lucky part of this thing, that somehow we see that puppetry becomes more important. Somehow we see that device theater exists. Somehow we say that theater can be also cooperation. And this is something we can also see at the Theater Academy when the students now resisting what's happening, they create a cooperative way of existing together. And there as well, we see, I think, a much less hierarchy between the genders. And they also express that this is how they want to work in the future, in much more cooperation. So I think this has something to do with the legacy of what Ildi is saying and what Zita is saying. It's not coming out of the blue from nothing. Even if I did a small survey and at the academy, there were always these women. There usually just one in a class, and about whom we know nothing. What happened to them, and where are they now?
I would like a little bit to reflect on our activity as critics, because as we are talking about women artists on the performing arts field, we see a change on this field as women artists appearing more and more. But the critics field is very, very feminine. And it became very feminine in the past decade. How do you explain this, Noémi?
It's not the sign of, I mean, if all the theater directors were women, I think it was a different sign than all the critics being women. I think it's an evident sign of the whole field being marginal. And when in the 70s, the Cultural Political Weekly where I work had a woman theater critic, it meant something because the whole field was so masculine that it was really something that Vera Leta is a woman there among all these men. Now that I'm a woman and everyone is a woman means that you have to come from the middle class, otherwise you cannot earn your living and cannot work a hobby job like being a theater critic or do anything with theory basically in Hungary. So it really has to do with the change of the field, I think.
But in a very different direction, because
Yes.
it's very little power in being a critic in Hungary right now. Yeah, I think I would like a little bit to ask you to reflect upon what is the advantage, if there is any, from your viewpoint, of being a woman in the artistic field, and maybe to share a kind of positive experience you had as a woman here or abroad, or because Ildikó was saying how much easier is for her to work abroad. So maybe we could think about something which can be labeled as advantage of being a woman. Or is there anything like that?
Yes, like I would also reflect on Noémi, that I think when I finished in the university it's already changed a bit. So I think this idea about directors that they like frontally say what you have to do is changed. So it's like there is more chance to like sing together, cooperative and in groups. So I really don't feel myself confident if I have to like really strictly say all the time what is happening. So I more believe in like together thinking. And yeah, it's a hard question. I don't know. For example, I realized many times I did performances about women's, but when I choose, it was not like that, okay, I want to speak about women's, but somehow when I was already, for example, in the rehearsals, I realized, yeah, it's again about women's. So I think it's maybe an advantage that we could like really personally speaking about women's issues. So it's maybe some advantage, I think. Or if I think back, for example, we did a performance with Dorka Porogi, she's my classmate in doctoral, and we did a performance about Fanny Gyarmati. She is a wife of Miklós Radnóti, who is a really famous Hungarian poetess, but like Fanny Gyarmati was more well known about the wife of him. But when her diary like was published, it was really amazing to see that she's like an own identity and like an amazing writer also. So for example, this kind of issue, which is like with me somehow not like a before decision, it's somehow I just realized on the way or why we are doing. Yeah, it's really important. It's really something which I have to do. And yeah, it came like honestly and organically and natural somehow.
For me, Sweden was a place, I think, where I felt the first time that I don't have to, but there is no expectation towards me that I can't fulfill, or like to show some or to play a role of the director, which I call in myself a gym teacher. I always feel that it's something like this in Hungary. Sometimes, I wouldn't say always, but sometimes I feel like this. And in Sweden, it was just, I was accepted how I am. And it gave such a big power and relief. It was really like get rid of a big burden. And it gave also for a long time, I mean, it's like a present that I can carry with me, a gift that this being so appreciated and trusted and accepted and supported is something I lack in Hungarian theater field. It's I think here it is normal that you are always criticized. you have to feel always that you should make something differently because it's not good enough. And at this point I felt that it's bullshit. We can do it in a completely different way. It doesn't have to be like this. So it happened a year ago, but I think I can get nutrition from this for my life, or it really changed my point of view in many into be consciously someone who tries to change things. And I think, as Zita said, that unconsciously she choose topics or stories with women. I always made it like this. If I think of Mary Stuart, I made 2014. It was about 2 women, but already in this I changed the cast and I put 3 actresses in a man's role, and I feminized this role. I don't know if this word exists, but I made a female role. And it was not a political act. It was before Me Too. It was just natural for me to make it like this. But right now, when I think I will have a work in Germany in summer, and I will direct a play with 2 roles for women and 10 roles for men. And I already told the producers I want to cast half of it with women, because I don't think it's right like this. It shouldn't be like this. And I can imagine a political play also with women. We don't have to have always only men on stage. And of course, it has limits, and I don't want to force something that can't prove its authenticity or truth. But I think we can change it consciously and not just to suffer what's happening around us. And I try to do it like this. And to be in different countries, I face completely different cultural differences, I would say, how a female director is considered, because in some of these countries a female director is normal or usual, but still there are a lot of problems how female or women are considered to be in the society. So this has a lot of shades, and And I think I can have, from this a bit marginalized point of view, I can have a perspective that I can use to open up themes and to show topics of women that would never be shown. And also it's good for men. I see that men are so happy that they can just be in other situation that they used to be all the times. But I can just a small example. For example, in my last show I made here in Budapest, Andromache, and I can remember this scene when Gabriella Hámori, who plays Andromache, and he has to decide whether she has to decide whether her son should be killed or not. And meanwhile, she is thinking about this very big question. She just bows down and she binds the shoelaces of the kid. And this is something that I think it's such a moment that's kind of female, I would say, to solve a dramatic moment like this.
Noémi, can you relate to this question of having advantages of being a female critic, a female academic, a female editor? Is there any advantage of being like that?
I thought you asked the same question from me too. Because,
no, I'm asking a question to your position.
Okay. Actually, the audience in Hungary is more like a female audience. Like according to surveys, it's the 13% of the adult population who advantages from the cultural goods like concerts, theaters, and so on, and mostly women. And it's mostly men who they see there. But maybe being a woman theater critic, you can relate to this audience more, and also just connecting it to what Ildi and Zita said, they can connect to this audience more, like showing the same kind of experiences, and maybe the critic can be a connection and helper part in that process.
Before we go to the last question, I would like to show Zita's performance. And Zita, if you could say a sentence about the small excerpt we are going to see for the show.
Yeah, so this is, I think the English title is The Road Out of Persia. The Hungarian title is A halál kilovagolt Perzsiából. It's a Hungarian novel from the 80s. And I really like that work because I think it's, so we did it together with András Juhász, who is a video artist. So it's really much visual and like technical and puppet and many things together. So, and we really often work here with loop film, which is a kind of technique which maybe you know better from music, when it's coming again and again around, and it starts to damaging, and it's really come together, the visual, with the main character who is like really suffering from writing because he's an alcoholist and he's really addicted. So I really like that project because it was like a group experiences, I would say. So here, for example, I really felt that we could sing together with many people together, and it was like a really different structure than usual how we rehearsed that.
Íme a rettenetes üres fehér papír, amire írnom kell.
Ki kollégájával, ha barátságot nem is, de sajátságos rokonszenvet éreztek egymás iránt, ugyanis a strandokon mindketten nőket akartak felszedni.
Te vagy a csúcs
teraszon megebédelhetnénk.
Ugyan, mikor olyan finomat ettem ebédre. Vesevelőt.
Ez a kőműves egyébként a saját házát építette, és munka közben lett öngyilkos. Talán a felesége nem szült gyereket a férjének. Talán úgy számítgattak, előbb legyen kész a ház, aztán jöhetnek a gyerekek. 4 napig élt még. Nem tudhatta. A lány titkos dédelgetett vágya, hogy nem jogász, hanem slágerénekesnő lesz. És neki is csodálatot kell majd mutatnia Krisztina művészete iránt. Előbb azért befejezi az egyetemet, mert a slágerénekesi pálya rögös és bizonytalan.
Hallom, ma is hallom a zenét.
Csókja maga volt a szerelem, lángol, mint a hajnal keleten. Napfény tűnik így elnyugaton, elfeledni én őt nem akarom. Kislány a zongoránál, fehérebb az orgonánál, jaj, de szépen játszotta a Liszt rapszódiát. Kislány, kit úgy szerettem, akit soha nem szerettem, rabja voltam, mint egy kisdiák.
Tehát már megint ittál és megint cigarettálsz. De magára vessen! A gyermek anyjához akarta vágni a cipőjét, azóta nincs felesége, s nincs gyereke! Elveszett ember lett belőle! Utolsóbb, a legutolsóbb koldusnál!
Képtelen vagyok másra gondolni, mint a sörre és a cigarettára. És természetesen arra, miként fekhetnék le Krisztinával.
And now we are coming to the last question, which is, I would like you to ask to share some worst experience as a woman director, woman artist, woman critic, editor, academic, whatever position you choose. And maybe you could offer us even a funny story or whatever you consider characteristic for a Hungarian situation. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can start, but it's not really funny. Like, I have just like some that, for example, when we were just talking about that maybe hopefully it's change, and now like a director can say, this is my opinion, but we can share together and sing together. But in my first rehearsal period, there was, if I asked something from my actors, they said, why do you ask? You have the salary for a director, so you cannot ask our opinion. So it was really bad, because then I had to change and I had to show my masculinity, which I really don't like to use, but I had to. So it was quite bad. And what I also wanted to share, I really feel strange sometimes that in Hungary we have to like negotiate our salary. So you have to be strong enough to speak about money well. Otherwise, it usually happens that, for example, men get more salary than women. So sometimes I ask and it turns out and I feel myself really stupid somehow that, okay, maybe I would not enough good in speaking about money or not enough strong. And I think it's really just unfair.
Thank you. Next,
Yeah,
please.
I have. It happened not in Hungary, but in Serbia, but in the Hungarian ensemble in Subotica, Szabadka, where I was working. And I had a beautiful time with the actors, and I think it was one of my best directing I made there. So I really have nice memories about it, but I had a big problem with the sound technician, who was a very macho guy, and he just rejected to work. And it was a kind of relief that I heard that Gábor Máté, who is the leader of the Katona József Theater, he had also the same problem with this guy, but it not yet couldn't solve my problem. That he was so afraid, I think, in the end, that he cannot manage the show, because he rejected to use a digital what the name of, the
recording.
The board, the digital board, where you can just control all the sounds. So it was quite a complex show with loopers and sound looper and microphones and microports and I don't know, a lot of instruments and everything, and it was the reason why he refused to work, and he really made such a difficult time for us, and all the ensemble was terrified of him. And I felt the first time that there is no one who can deal with a sound technician who is just destroying our work we've been working on for weeks, and in the intervals, because my way of how to solve this was that I kept my calm, and I just did not fight with him, and so he had no tools against me. Only that he sat down in the intervals of the rehearsals, and he tried, and he started to play very loud on the keyboard, and it was some kind of terrible, but it was so terrible you can't imagine. And this how he just chased us out of the room. But in the end, I was fed up of this, and I just hired a guy from my own money from Budapest, and I brought him to each of the performances. So that's my story.
Noémi, do you have a story?
Can I add one more thing to your previous question, which I forgot? Like how the theater critic can help if I am a woman and the artists are women. Just I think of Zita's works, for example, when there are, I don't know, in its visual, it is something of maybe my childhood too, maybe more glittery clothes, maybe something more closely linked to camp, which means something to me and maybe not taken so seriously by certain men, I don't say every man. So maybe this kind of interpretation can help. And with Ildi, I thought of her, she already mentioned Andromache, and maybe it has nothing to do with being women, but I just spotted that here is somebody during the first lockdown who is thinking about going to Zoom in Hungarian theater when actually no one else was interested in that device yet. in Hungary, but at the same time in Germany, in München, I saw that the same thing is happening. A Zoom performance is created, and we were in synchron first time with Germany during this lockdown. And I just thought that it's maybe telling that somebody who is not coming from the mainstream is doing this. And about the bad experience, it's not so bad. It's funny, but maybe I won't tell it funny. That there is a very established and famous director who wrote me a mail because he found a mistake in one of my reviews, and I explained him why I wrote that, but I didn't want to finish the conversation because I wanted to write him something, but he wanted to finish the conversation. And he told me, okay, I know you have a different taste, or you see things differently, like you are a woman activist, theater critic, and I wisely accept your position and your existence. He said that. So he accepts me.
I think I never, as a critic in the last 2 decades, I practiced as a critic, I never get an angry letter from a female director, only from male directors. So I also have...
it wasn't about his show.
It wasn't about his show, yeah.
No.
Okay. So I think we came to the end of our discussion today, and I would like to thank you very much, Ildikó, Zita, and Noémi, for sharing your thoughts, and I wish you a long and rich career in whatever you want to experience, and you change careers, as Ildikó also did, from becoming a director, being dramaturg, Zita being a puppet director, graduating a puppet director and working in different fields, and Noémi, you also juggle with lots of things. So thank you again, and I wish you all the best. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura,
Thank you.
if you are here and listening to us.